Hello, welcome to a Volo's Monsters episode of How to Play D&D, the Explainer podcast with one experienced dungeon master and one failed scriptwriter to discuss D&D topics. My name is Kinsey, and I'm proud to say my guest for the entirety of this series is none other than Abby from Tabletop Curiosities. Hello, Abby.
Hello,
thank you for coming back to hopefully kind of finish off our guide to monsters for this.
Yeah, we've been through almost the whole Volo's guide at this point. So
we're getting through it. I've already actually had requests for other books of like bestiaries, so we'll see.
Nice.
We'll see.
So we are here to provide.
That's it. That's what we're doing. Now, this episode, I've selected the topic. Should I go? Should I say what it is?
Yeah. What is this week's topic, Connor?
Sea spawn?
Let's get to it. So today's episode is on sea spawn, Aquaman's Danish cousin, but he's got dark secrets. Connor, why did you choose the sea spawn?
I chose the sea spawn. I'm really not good at being asked questions. That's what I've learned immediately. Now, I chose the sea spawn because I feel like it's a really easy enemy to use. If you see the image of it, and we'll put that on the thumbnail as always for these episodes, but it is literally what like a merman looks like. It's like, you know, a kind of like darker version. I say a more historical version of kind of like a sea to land merman, you know, with that, you know, he's got the legs still. He hasn't got the fish's tail, but he's got gills and fins, a bit like, I think he's called Blue from, what's his name? Damn, I fucked it, Abby. I fucked it.
What's I can't help.
Hellboy.
It's so annoying.
Hellboy.
Hellboy. The quirky fish man. Yes.
The quirky fish man. Absolutely love him. I'm pretty sure he's called Blue. But yeah, I feel it's a great enemy, and also it's got a really good kind of lore as to why they exist, which is what we'll talk about at the end.
Oh, we love that. Yeah, it's got a very like classic feel to it. Of that, just this is exactly what you'd expect a fantasy sea creature / humanoid hybrid to be.
Yeah,
sure.
It's got a really good like mix from like when you think of like merfolk, there was kind of like, you know, like tail, like bottom half, but there are like, you know, darker kind of old stories of like merfolk that are just literally human but with scaly skin and the gills and things. And so I feel this comes across as a bit of a, if you're running like a horror campaign or a darker campaign, maybe this is what you're after when it comes to like sea enemies.
Yeah, maybe that's why for me this is what I think of when you say like, oh, the guy with the tail. It's a bit too like hero for me.
Yeah,
that's like Aquaman and that kind of stuff. Whereas dark like folktale stuff. This 100%. I feel like really gets into the vibe.
It feels like a Cthulhu like a Cthulhu enemy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, that real like mismatch of human and creature for sure. 100%. So what kind of stats does the sea spawn have?
Okay, so the sea spawn, the armor class 11s was actually pretty rubbish. Like the chances of you missing this when you come across it is low. The hit points are only 32 as well, so once again low. It has a decent swim speed of 30 feet, and its regular speed on land is 20, as you can imagine, because it's mostly like a sea creature.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It has a multi-attack, which is pretty good for a low level. So two unarmed strikes and one with its Piscine anatomy. So the Piscine anatomy, the sea spawn has one or more of the following attack options, provided it has the appropriate anatomy. So even that is a bit of customization from the DM there. Doesn't mean every sea spawn the party come up against will be the same, which I think is like nice. You don't get that kind of flavor usually unless you're home brewing.
Yeah, definitely. It allows you to add that in yourself and have like maybe a few different ones to sort of show the difference in the same battle, in the same encounter, which is really nice.
Exactly. Like the three it gives here with stats for that Piscine anatomy is it has a bite, has poison quills, which involve a whole lot of saves and saving throws, being poisoned, obviously, and then tentacle. So that might be like bludgeoning damage as well as being grappled. So like there is like a variety of things going on here. And bear in mind that's those three things are included in that multi-attack. So it can be quite a fun encounter if you get a couple of these that aren't exactly high AC, high HP, but there's like variety in the combat.
Yeah, I love that kind of balance, especially at low level, because you can't throw something with 100 HP and like an
Yeah.
AC of 20 at a low level party. But having those like deadly attacks of like if it does get you, it
Mm,
actually is going to cause some damage. So don't
definitely.
miss, like, don't roll a one. That's all
100%.
you need.
100%.
Ah, awesome. So how would a DM use them in a game?
So I think, and we've had this before. We seem to have a tendency to pick kind of like aquatic creatures quite often. I think, like even when we've talked about the monster episodes before the Volo's Guide season, um, and we often say, "Oh, you could easily have this where they kind of encounter by jumping on the ship, this kind of thing." But I do think the sea spawn is great in the sense that quite often, especially low level parties, um, say this is the first time they've come across one of these things, a low level party will quite likely try to capture it. Amount of
Mm,
times I've run sessions for first timers and they will capture the goblin and try and make friends of it or use it as a kind of like bargaining chip. Well, the sea spawn actually has like limited amphibiousness, so it needs to be submerged in the sea at least once a day for 1 minute to avoid suffocation. So it's quite fun if, as the DM, you set it up that there is the possibility of trapping one of these creatures for like information down the line or a trade. Maybe it's like a prince sea spawn, that kind of thing, or a commander.
mm.
But then the challenge is keeping this creature that you've got captive submerged at least once a day. And I think that would be quite a fun way of doing it rather than just being a quick combat encounter.
Yeah, definitely. That's giving my like DM senses all
Yeah,
sorts of ideas straight away because I don't think I'd tell the party either, and I'd kind of let it play out and keep an eye on the time, and then be like, oh, something's happening, like, and then they've got to scramble to like find a bucket of water or something
100%.
ridiculous.
And
Yeah.
it works really well as well because the languages it says it understands Aquan and Common, so it can understand like the regular party goer, but it can't speak. So imagine if you've set this up that they kind of feel like they've got to keep this thing captive for like bargaining chip of some kind of or importance, but it can't tell you that it's dying. So you can just describe things as the DM, or the party can have their wits about them and ask, "How's this guy doing?" But he can't communicate back with them. So that could be quite a good like full session puzzle, really, of trying to keep this
Yeah.
thing looked after.
And a good bit of fun for the DM as well to maybe like some silly noises or or
Yeah, some
things
sign
that it's
language, just any.
trying to communicate, but it
Yeah,
can't. It's
it
just
would
drowning in air.
100%. That they're really trying to do their best, but they're an absolute mess, which is like every D&D party. So imagine this sea spawn just ending up going from like being the enemy to being like everyone's gutted they accidentally killed their best friend. Like that's
Yes.
that's 100% how this goes.
Those parties that always try and capture a pet as well. You've got to punish them sometimes. Be like, yeah, your pet can't breathe, mate.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I do think it would be good fun because it is more of a humanoid than like the regular kind of sea creature. There is something about it that you kind of go, all right, well, we can at least communicate. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why it works better when it's not like a traditional merfolk as well. That it's got legs, it's got like facial features. You take it for granted more that it probably has like similarities to you as a party member.
mm,
So when it doesn't actually, that's like that can be really fun for the DM to play to.
yeah, definitely. That's a whole load of shenanigans required there. Um,
100%.
So that's we've kind of touched on how would you use them? Have you encountered one before? Have you run with one? Have somebody run one in a game you've played in?
Yeah, so I've actually used these in my own kind of like couple of years of campaign where there is kind of like an encampment. And I actually use these in the lore that they're kind of the gap between in evolution between like this island's lore of humans have appeared here, but how? Well, they actually come from these guys, and these guys have come from the sea, like through fish, that kind of thing. There's like an evolutionary gap there. Not to be like too deep into it, but essentially like these are seen as subhuman because obviously they're not human and they're not evolved enough, so they're kind of taken for granted. They keep themselves to themselves, and then they come off quite they look scary. They come off quite friendly though, because they can't communicate and they back off. We've talked about it before with encounters on the Volo Guides season, where you know things that kind of wait in the dark to have their chance. And this is
Mm,
definitely one of those in my sessions where they don't communicate. It's weird that they're sticking around and they won't talk to you or attack you. And then when they've got their chance, they're more than capable of like kind of like pulling you apart, keeping you in the dark.
yeah. And they clearly want to do that as well, where there's that like evolutionary element. I think that could be quite scary because like it becomes that bridge between monster and human. How
Mm,
far gone are they? How much do they understand? Are they just out for blood? Like,
yeah.
you never know, do you? So it can be scary.
100%, 100%. They're really good, like we said a minute earlier about the Cthulhu aspect of it. That kind of like aquatic, like ethereal from a different zone they've kind of got going on, like works really well with like their description and the way you can play them as well. Like you can play into those kind of like darker moments where they don't have to be like groundbreaking creatures, but there's something more about them than you just encounter them and then they're done. Like there's a lot more you can play with.
Yeah, and even those differences in the stats, like it gives you sort of like differences of like if you were playing with evolutionary stuff, or like Volo talks in the guide about these could be like pacted creatures to
Mm,
bigger big bads in the sea, krakens, that kind of thing. So it's like, what mutations have they picked up? Did they get the poison quill? Did they get the big teeth? And
yeah.
you could really actually do like a whole one shot and a whole setting based around this kind of thing.
They do feel like a C version of the GIF Yankee, in the sense of like, I don't know if like people who listened to this episode have listened to our GIF Yankee episode we did way back with Sam Pay, but that in that like we learned that like there's like multiple stat blocks for these as like a higher order, like a part like patriarchy kind of thing, and the or hierarchy, sorry, and the like with the sea spawn, they don't have to be just like a single stat block with a variety of moves. There could be like a king of these, a queen of these, a kind of like a mother. There's so much you can do with it. Where I think some enemies you kind of take them for what they are, and that's enough, and that's absolutely fine. With these, it feels like because they're on that humanoid aspect, the evolutionary aspect, and we'll get into the summary obviously in a second of what Volo describes them like there's a lot you could do with these as a DM where you could make it like the world, a bit like the GIF Yankees have their own setting. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool creature to dive into if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think Volo even gives an example in the book of like a kind of canon adventure within the D&D world where there's a whole island of these guys and there's like all mysteries to kind of unpick, and
Mm,
they sacrifice children into the sea and then they come back as sea spawn, and there's like so much that you could do with it. I really like it.
yeah,
Um, I'm going to get you though, before we do the quote from Volo.
yeah.
You always get me with a weird question to start with.
Go on then.
My lack of experience of hosting the podcast made me forget, so I'm going to have you.
All right.
So I'm writing my first ever campaign for D&D, but I'm
Yeah.
scared that my players won't find me repulsive enough. What can I do to ensure repulsivity? What am I doing?
Do you know what? I would break a tooth. I'd break a tooth. We haven't planned this, as people can tell. I'd break a tooth, and instead of like a cyanide capsule, I'd put like, when like in movies where they put like something in their mouth and then they like throw up, like on cue, or like fake blood. I'd do something like that makes sense to the session. And when I'm describing something, I'd break it, and then like it becomes way more realistic for the session. Everyone's freaking out, and then you give a slow clap. You like
I'm
you.
actually blown away at how your brain works.
I know,
Everyone else gets those questions and it's like, huh? What? And
we
you're like,
hadn't planned
oh,
this either.
I
Like
get
I
it.
wrote the
Yeah.
questions for you, not the other way around. So we literally just decided before recording this would swap it. So it's quite funny. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. That was actually a really great answer. Yeah. Use
Thank you.
props in your games, guys. Not cyanide or nothing like that,
No,
but
yeah, don't do
some
that.
fake blood and some props, and then give yourself a slow clap.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%, 100%.
So back on track. What does Volo say about the sea spawn?
So he says they are transformed, or he doesn't say actually, Elminster says they are
Oh.
transformed by the sea and enslaved by powers of the deeps. And the transformation is more than mere fins and tentacles. They come to love their slavery, poor souls. So I actually
Ooh.
think he describes quite a lot in a in a sentence or two there. But I think it's really good. There's so much lore you can take just from that you can either take from what is there and you go, all right, well, D like Wizards of the Coast have made this up, D&D have made this up, or like what you can kind of flesh out and really make it yourself. So with mine, as I described, I kind of reverse engineered that act, not on purpose to just fit what made sense in my world, but they go into being these creatures, whereas I had it that everything came from these creatures. So
Mm.
there's so much here. It does give the idea from that summary that they are kind of like evil in some way because they come to love it, or maybe it's a bit like Gollum, where they've grown so much into one side of how they are that they've lost all kind of they've ceased to care about what they were. I think that's a really
Yeah.
cool like setting to have.
And RP wise, like a good party would probably try and find those little pieces of humanity. Like,
Yeah,
they'd try and find the Schmeagle within there.
yeah, yeah.
And then you'd just go, yeah, no, it bites you. You're done.
Yeah, yeah. 100. I mean, honestly, I do think there's. I'll say now that when we were putting these lists together, like it wasn't the first thing on our list, but I was like, well, actually, this is a pretty good one because I know we've had a lot of like sea creatures, to a point, but like I said earlier, it seems to be something that we just keep coming back to. But they are like a really good creature you can do a lot with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely smash that, I'd say. And today's adventure is sadly coming to a close, but we are back again next week with the topic: the sun is actually a hole in space, and the other side is an orange.
Damn.
And as always, thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to join in on the D&D action, then please follow How to Play D&D on Instagram. Check out the link in bio to join our Discord server, and also check out Black Mark Clo. Connor is representing for anyone looking at the video version today. Absolutely repping. Very cool D&D clothing. Thank you very much. I have been Abby.
I've been Connor Kinsey, but before we good day, Abby, what do you do? Where can we find you?
I am a dice maker. You can find me Tabletop Curiosities on all the socials.
Perfect. Good day.